We are back here on our special series, which is Podcast 9000, covering a lot of what's happening on the Avalanche ecosystem. And today's going to be a good one because we're going to dive into two topics. One is going to be around the area of DePIN and really utility use case within the AVAX ecosystem. That'll be with, of course, Mr. Ben Corrado, who's coming over as the CEO of DeEEP Network. And then also we're going to take a look at what's happening on the legal front. There's many things going on with not only projects that are launching, but also, if you guys didn't know, Avalanche is up for a stablecoin selection over at the state of Wyoming. So a lot of news there to cover. And with me on that is going to be Russell Klein coming in as the attorney over at Ava Labs. So great to have both of you guys on the show. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
All right, so let's just get into it. Ben, I want to start with you quickly. And I think when you look at DePIN, this has been one of those categories that I think a lot of people have expected to be one of the leading categories to really kind of run in this particular bull run. A lot of new utility coming within it. Tell me a quick rundown on what DeEEP is trying to do, and how is this nerd node connected to you guys?
Yeah, so at DeEEP, we're trying to make Web3 actually run on DePIN. So everybody's been running all their Web3 solutions to date primarily on Web2. So you're going out and you're hosting it on Azure or AWS or some other third-party Web2 hosting platform, right? Well, that doesn't really make us a decentralized way to run things. It just changes who pays for those Web2 services, right? And they can still be shut down by one entity effectively. So at DeEEP, we're really focused on making it so that we can run Web3 super easily on DePIN that can go inside your home, and then share the profitability of running that and running services for Web3 with the people who are actually hosting it. And
all right, so I want to interrupt you there for a second.
Yeah, go for it.
There's a device that I just showed on screen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the pieces of equipment. You guys did your first batch out.
Yeah.
Is that part of the whole connection of what you guys are doing?
That's exactly right. So somebody buys a DePIN device from us. They plug it into the internet at their home. And our network takes advantage of the computing power on that device and automatically loads it up with a whole bunch of Web3 services.
Gotcha.
And so the other question you asked about is NerdNode, which is another company that I helped found. And we focus on running Web3 services. So for the last 3-4 years, we've been running Web3 node software for people. Mm-hmm. We've done that primarily on our own hardware, a little bit of VPS services, those types of things. And the goal here is that we're going to take everything we've been running there, and it's going to run on the DeEEP network. So that is going to be the first service provider that will be running assets on DeEEP network. And the great part about that is we already have revenue coming in from all of those services. And that revenue gets shared with everybody who buys these DePIN devices. And at the tune of about 50%. And that does not include any of the minting rewards that all of our customers get. So as you can see here, you could be running an ETH validator, some Myriad gaming nodes, some smart nodes, Gala Founders nodes, different types of nodes. And you could see, pretty high earnings per year just for running this box in your home. That represents that 50% share. And that's if everything's fully utilized on the network. Right. And we also mint rewards to customers for being part of the network, kind of bootstrapping rewards, if you will, to how the network gets run and that they plugged it in and configured it correctly.
Yeah. Okay. So a lot to unpack there. I do want to kind of bring in Russell on what we're seeing from a growth standpoint within the AVAX ecosystem. Russell, I know you have consulted with a variety of projects. I'll bring a few of them up on screen, but one that I'm involved with right now pretty heavily in terms of using it, which I have found great utility in that, is Arena. So fantastic tool. I think if you guys have not checked out Arena, if you're watching this, just jump over to Arena. You can authorize this with your X account. So you can basically, it's a very similar functionality of X. A great place for community. I would say it's one of the better Avalanche communities out there. Russell, when you look at projects like what Arena has been able to do, and then you compare this to other projects that are brewing around utility, what are you seeing right now that excites you? Like, this could be the next phase.
Yeah. Well, first, since I'm the lawyer, I'll say my views are just my own, and I'm not going to represent Arena or any other project or Ava Labs. But personally, like Arena was the first time I really saw a crypto product that was better than the Web 2 product. So the Web 3 is better than the Web 2 because about a couple months ago, they launched Stages, their version of the Twitter Spaces.
Yep.
And it's a superior product because
it's
you have
fantastic.
the chat room. And it
so
integrates with all these tokens and these other projects. You can use them as tipping things, and it ties to your identity. The biggest problem with a lot of these protocols when you're in DeFi or SocialFi, it's all, you don't know what's going on. It's all the bundled people dumping on you and anonymous, who knows what they are. Arena, now you've got trusted identity. And it's just a great place for community. You can have these little groups and chats and your own little arena. They buy your ticket, or you just have a Twitter space where you can actually monetize it. People can tip the speakers, and it's a lot more fun. And there's the chat room, and it's going to be more integrated to all these other things in the future. They're going to have their version of the token launcher, where instead of just getting some anonymous bundled Solana supply dumped on you, you can see who's in charge of the product, who's the trusted people, and join projects. And it'll be kind of like what Facebook was in the early 2000s. It'll tie you'll sign in and tie all these other ecosystems together.
Well, I think the thing that, first of all, Ava Labs is doing a great job on really kind of exposing a lot of these projects that are out there. Ben, I want to kind of shift over to the idea of decentralized social, because as we start to see projects like Arena start to develop within the AVAX ecosystem, we've already seen Lens Protocol, Farcaster, et cetera, that all have kind of come into at least the social sphere, but we haven't necessarily seen a true winner yet. And I'm kind of curious, when you look at the functionality of what you guys are doing, could you ever, if we ever truly get decentralized social, in other words, I have my own, almost like having my own server of my data. Could I ever use an IoT product like what you guys are building for maybe housing my own social media data at my house?
Yeah, 100%. And that's one of the big key pieces we've been looking at when building out DeEEP Network is this ability to keep content on that matters to the people who are hosting it. Right. And so that could be your social media information, like you want yours protected and running in your house. That could also be a game that you've loved and that the company who made that game doesn't want to pay to host anymore. Right. That can live on your server. That can be HR data. We're working with an HR company right now, and we got to figure out things like GDPR compliance and different regulatory pieces, right? So all of this like data security and data ownership is critical to how Web3 can grow, and we can really use DeEEP Network to basically build up different locations where this data can be stored and then replicated, whether that's replicated through personal trust or through digital trust, to make sure that we don't lose that data in the event of outages.
Do you think that we're in a position right now where social is finally going to be maybe a true decentralized social? I mean, we are so close. We've saw this when you look at Nostr. I will say it's been a great experiment, with what they've been able to do so far, but it hasn't been one of those things that's gone viral. It hasn't really had a TikTok moment or an Instagram moment. What do you think that it's going to take for a Web3 social platform to truly?
Yeah, it's an interesting question. There's a whole bunch of different factors. I think one of them that relates to what we do is how easy is it to deploy, right? Mm-hmm. So the common person who wants to use social networking is not a computer engineer that can go install complicated Linux software and maintain it. right? It has to be super simple for them to one click deploy something and it to work and it to be truly distributed, right? And that's, I think, been our ethos about every project we do is how easy is it to deploy? It literally has to be plug in the box and click one button. It can't be anything more complicated than that, or we start losing users, right? And so I think that's a huge aspect to it. And then getting that critical mass of core users and community has to be there so that network is stable when you get that viral moment, right?
Yeah.
And so at DeEEP, one of the things that we're building into our network is spare capacity, right? We do not want our network running at 100% capacity all the time. We want it to be at 50 to 60%. That way we have these flex capability, right? So that when there are these viral moments, that user experience that people have using our network that might be running a social media platform, it feels great, right? Their experience doesn't change during this viral moment to where it all slows down. I think some of those are kind of the technical challenges. There's obviously lots of human and social interaction challenges associated with getting a Web3 social media platform to pop. But I think from a technical perspective, those are the pieces we're focusing on at DeEEP, because user experience is king when it comes to this. Russell was just talking about that. Finally, a product that's better in Web3 than Web2. Well, that's what people care about. Like Web2, Web3, people care less about that than they do, did I have a great experience using this product? Right?
Well, I think the community nature of what Web3 has brought, at least that's one of the areas that I think we've noticed here at PBN is when we go out and research projects, and we're looking at all different industries. Obviously, we look at the finance and the crypto industry, then that takes you down the rabbit hole of all the different projects, utility. Then you uncover what I think is maybe the golden egg of crypto, and that is these community centers. A good example is that on Avalanche is Ket. You look at the Ket community, and I know, Russell, you're working with them. First of all, how did Ket become so viral so fast? So that kind of goes back to my point that I was talking about there with Ben. What was the magic there?
I don't really know. It just showed me that if we, as in anyone that supports the ecosystem, try to artificially make a community thing, it just doesn't work. It has to just come from the magic of the community. And this guy was just very involved in all of this stuff, and there was a very strong, tight knit group of these Avalanche community people, and it was just like an experiment, a fun project. He had been very involved in the NFT trading and gaming. He was a top off the grid player, and he wanted to raise a DAO and have a fun cross bridge trading bot and tie that into some other interesting things, like have the meme and the art. And then we just innovated with a lot of interesting things. At this time, there was this whole, people would raise money for the AIGG, and all these insiders would get it and then just dump on everyone. So for fun, we put together the I saw you had seen it before, the shame board, the cat board, to kind of tie, like I was saying about the arena, tying this stuff to people's real identities and showing them what happened. And
who the holders are and who are not, who the paper.
It's all fun. It's fun and it's drama, but it really came out at the time where suddenly everyone was realizing all of these meme coins that they bought were really bundled scams that were being dumped on them. And it really hurt. And so in these other chains, especially Solana, people were realizing how much extraction was done by insiders and bad actors. Bingo. So this kind of went viral, where people were seeing they could have the same community fun, but not necessarily be dumped on. And so
you're hitting on a lot of good things there too, because we haven't seen that kind of activity and behavior on Avalanche, where when you look at the casino on Solana right now, it has really, I think it's damaged the ecosystem to a certain extent. Sure, Solana is going to always be there, and it's always going to continue to grow in other areas. But man, the meme coin factory on Sol and Pump Fund were absolutely insane in terms of just validity of being able to, bridge the next level of crypto, especially for adoption. So it's a trouble.
it really showed. Like, it's supposed to be that, oh, I see this thing, it's funny, I want to collect it, I'm in this little group with a
Bingo.
community. But that's destroyed if, thanks to the nature of this anonymous system, you don't know who's taking advantage of you. And it was really shocking, even to me, when I saw that these people were essentially doing bundled pump and dumps with even the big name products from big politicians and celebrities. And that was just, so, this was just one of the things that's why tying it to Arena and the Ket thing, like tying it to your community and your social reputation, is really the only way to do these and give any trust to your community.
I totally agree with that. Explain the process. Before the show, we were talking about, how Ket went to market. And one thing that they did was they set up in the state of Wyoming. That's an intriguing thing because, of course, the state of Wyoming has a stablecoin commission now, and they're trying to make a decision. Avalanche, of course, being at the top of the list there. We'll talk about that in a second. But the Ket community ended up leveraging in the state of Wyoming the DAO option there, which is very unique in setting up an LLC. Explain to our users and people why that is so important and why you guys did it there.
Yeah, people are probably familiar with Dows from all the way back to the Ethereum DAO hack. But the problem with, essentially a bunch of people come together, they contribute, they have a project, and it's one of the great things about smart contracts and the internet. They came together, the Constitution DAO. They said, let's pool our money and buy the Constitution. Right. Mike Dudas, let's pool our money and buy a golf course, and then this NFT will represent our membership there. And all that stuff's great, except in pretty much most jurisdictions will treat that as a partnership without limited liability, where just like if we form a company together, but we don't really form a company, we're just a partnership, and we have joint and several liability. Anyone can bind us, and all the different partners are responsible for any of the debts of the other one and all those issues. So what we saw from the fairly recent CFTC and SEC actions against some of these DAOs like Uki DAO or Tornado Cash, you have unlimited liability, and they'll go after the members, they'll go after the devs, they'll go after whatever, anyone they can. So a couple places, but most notably Wyoming, which I believe is the first state to even have the LLC form at all. They innovated with a DAO LLC, so you could have the benefits of the DAO, but also the limited liability protection of an LLC.
Right.
And it gets into more things where they'll allow you to manage your company algorithmically, which essentially means, give us the address to the multi-sig. How's the whole thing governed? How's it managed? You can have the members get certain rights where they'll have the vote, the token voting governance, but you can assign a lawyer like me or the accountant to kind of handle it as an agent, but not be liable for any of the debts or liabilities of the DAO. And so, Wyoming's great. And it happens, that's where, because I was telling them, that Wyoming, that's where you should do it. And that turned into a whole meta itself, where the meme coin is the Ket from Wyoming now. And he's a big proponent of Wyoming. And it happens that's also where Avalanche is bidding to do their stablecoin.
Well, it was interesting because we did a show over on PBN the other day, and we were really focusing in on some of the key advantages. It was with Anthony Apollo from the Stablecoin Commission in Wyoming. And we just point blanked him. I said, hey, listen, you got like $5 million here in your budget to get this done. The likelihood is you're going to need a marketing arm. And we're like, dude, you have a Ket, meme coin community that's built around the state of Wyoming right now. In fact, I think they even have the state of Wyoming on their token design, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, here's your community to do a liftoff, which is really unique. And the marketing element, it almost as if Anthony was listening to what we were saying, because like 3 days later, they put that component in the proposal and shifted it around. First of all, how do you think this is going to land? I mean, obviously we've heard some things coming out of Wyoming. Avalanche is winning a couple of areas, but not necessarily the full connection to the stablecoin. How do you think this is going to end up? Or is this maybe just a negotiation ploy by the state?
I mean, I feel like this the commission there they were getting a lot of pressure for the people that didn't necessarily win on the numbers on the criteria. I think Avalanche probably won on the test net or the numbers or the metrics, but because it's a political thing, I think they tried to make sure that everyone has a chance, and they're gonna make sure that they're not gonna exclude anyone, and they're giving everyone a shot to do it. I don't understand how Avalanche will won like these subcategories, but we're gonna wait for the big category. But who knows? Maybe Ava. And when I say Avalanche, it's essentially Ava Cloud. But I mean, yeah, I think they're also realizing that it's kind of political, and when you have a new framework like with their LLC DAO or with the stablecoin or the crypto reserve by the state, it's very important to do it with marketing and promotion. And it's a great synergy. No one planned this, but it happens that since we thought Wyoming was so great and we're having fun with it, the Yellow Cat DAO will probably is one of the first governance vote they did said, and also donate to Wyoming, the Wyoming Blockchain University, to Senator Loomis. And, we're going to be doing stuff like that.
And there's a lot of good synergies there for sure.
But yeah, there's just so much synergy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm kind of looking at what's happening in Wyoming, what's happening on the stablecoin front, what we're seeing in terms of the idea of a digital ID and maybe a decentralized Web3 that truly could be real. When you look at the component of the wallet, and let's talk about just quickly here, and I want to bring you in on this, Ben, because one thing that I've always wondered, you have today, for those of you that maybe that you are watching this over on YouTube, you can have a software wallet or you can have a hardware wallet. It's pretty much that kind of simplicity for crypto. And everybody knows that those are potential breakpoints. It works differently than a bank account. And it's one thing that I think a lot of people that are new to crypto, when they look at this, it's really one of the things that kind of puts them on stall. And I'm kind of curious, Ben, do you think we'll ever see a scenario where a decentralized wallet, whether it's a software wallet, could ever make its way into an IoT device to where, think of it like having your own little bank account, away from, the insulated, if you could insulate your bank account away from the internet, so away from potential hacks, things of that nature, any kind of technology that you're seeing coming out on that?
It's an interesting question, and I think the practicalities of how do you use a wallet that's disconnected in a connected world is obviously the challenge there, right? And there's lots of hardware options. I mean, even in our own DeEEP devices, we're taking advantage of what look like hardware wallets practically, right? We have encryption chips that are dedicated, that hold special keys and that identify that device as being unique and tie it to a particular user, right? That's very similar to what we practically do with wallets. But I think the challenge as a user base that we're going to have to come to is, how do we make that kind of offline cold wallet solution usable for the common person, right? It's one thing to say, okay, go get your hardware cold wallet, plug it in, and sign something, right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us who have been in crypto for a long time, that's something we're comfortable at this point. But that is a huge stumbling block for anybody coming in.
No doubt.
So, I actually think that we'll probably see on-chain smart wallets take a larger role in this with auth providers.
Okay.
And most likely what will happen is it will look like a multi-sig solution associated with that, where you need to know something and have something. Similar to what we've been doing with email and passwords and all that, have something, know something with two-factor IDs and YubiKeys and different things like that.
Right.
Even YubiKeys are still hard for people. We've kind of moved to the passkey realm, right? Where which is very similar to actually the hardware I was talking about that we're using on the DeEEP device. It's usually like an encrypted enclave chipset that runs in your phone or in your computer, right?
Yeah.
And I think that those will end up being one of those multi-factor pieces eventually towards on-chain smart wallets that allow them to be used with also information that a passphrase, for instance. Because ultimately, it has to be easy for people to use. So if it's just an offline like box that you have to plug in, it's not really that much different. So I think that ease of use and how do we build great auth systems that feel like you're using Web 2, but give you that same security level that we need to have that real ownership of what that wallet is. Those are the pieces that are going to matter. And losing wallets is probably the one piece that's most scary for a lot of people, right? So putting them on chain and building multi-sig recovery methods, I think is where that market's going to land.
Well, and you look at the advancements that have been made. We do a high net worth individual webinar every month at a location here in South Florida, and it's in person, and we're teaching them, the basics of crypto. But really what it boils down to in most cases, it always comes down to how do I use these wallets? And it's either the software wallet or some guy has a ledger. And the horror stories that I have heard so far is a little bit scary, even to someone who's very savvy in crypto. You look at what Core is doing. They are evolving. So obviously we'll see some advancements. Core, for those of you guys that don't know, is kind of the native wallet to Avalanche. And it's going to be interesting to see these wallets evolve, whether we see it like what Solana is trying to do with the Seeker phone, where it's, a new hardware device that could potentially be there. But the thing that I am amazed with is the fact that in many cases, I helped a guy with his ledger the other day, and it had to get a software update. We had to reinstall all of his apps, which essentially so he could at least see his account balance. So his mobile app was registering, but his desktop or his laptop wasn't. And so we helped him. He brought it to the webinar. And the guy had like a couple $100,000 on this ledger. And I'm like, holy God. And you don't have this managed right. And I'm like, these are the kind of stepping stones that crypto is encountering right now. Here's my question. Russell, do you think with those kind of early stepping stone issues that we're faced with right now, and then what you see with what's happening, on this strategic reserve that, the president's talking about, now we're getting banks that are moving on this quicker. You've got Robinhood, you've got Coinbase, of course, that are the typical entry points. But you also have companies like Fidelity, where you can buy Bitcoin and Ethereum. Do you think we're going to get to that point where banks are going to be housing our crypto, but not where we have our keys? Like even my Avalanche sitting inside a Fidelity account. What do you think?
Yeah, I can see like with the multi-sig thing. The thing, on the other hand, when these big banks, they have all those licenses to do, once they have the custody and the money transmitter, like what's the point? I think maybe they are set up. I mean, what's the point of having to hold it myself? That's what the bank's for. And, I was very happy. What was that? The IRS, the SEC rule that says, you can be a qualified custodian, and that's what these financial institutions are for.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense to me, because someone like we're used to saying, okay, you got to have the UB keys and the backup and put your seed phrase in the safe in the vaults, but for the average person, they're just used to saying, oh, I forgot my password. I got to call customer service and reset it. Yeah. And I think that's going to be great. If we combine that with the seedless passphrase entry using your social media logins or whatnot, and have that attached to some trusted financial institution due to the custody, I think that's better. Because like right now, I think the risk is more that the risk is more that the self-custody people are going to lose their own keys or get exploited or hacked, rather than this trusted institution is going to go belly up like all these sexes from the last 20 years.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think the challenge again too is getting that next layer of onboarding especially from retail, is going to take a certain level of comfort. And I feel like we're at that point now, because I wonder, maybe this is a question that, Ben, you can answer too. Do you think we've hit the limit on those who are willing to go this far into crypto without us going into the next layer of retail adoption? Do you think there's any more crypto curious that become crypto native still out there in the market right now?
It's a hard question. I was at ETH Denver this last week, and the Uber driver who drove me to the airport on the way back, he had spent his entire week listening to people rattle off about all this crypto stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he was a reasonably intelligent guy, but he was still terrified of how to even get into it, right? There are too many choices. It's too complicated to figure out the wallet. Like, he doesn't know where any of the regulations are going. And so there's a lot of fear out there still. And I think that those stories are what I hear from friends and family that aren't in crypto, right?
Yes.
It's still this wild, wild west feel. There's a lot of things changing on all fronts in crypto every day. And
no doubt.
If you're not in it, it's really hard to track.
I mean, look at the market from just this week.
Yeah,
I mean, you get this crazy spike up. I mean, most, normal people would look at that and say, what the F is going on in this place?
Yeah. And so I think that, there's a couple pieces in my mind that come along with that. Getting regulatory frameworks that make sense and are clear and consistent is going to be key, right? And then the next is that ease of use piece. And, I think people still, like, when you tell them, I work in crypto, they kind of look at you like that guy that stores gold under his bed.
Yes.
Like,
every day I get that look.
And,
every day.
And we have to get, out of that stereotype, number one. But a lot of that comes with what we were just talking about, with having entities that are trustworthy, that people can engage with, that don't know how to safely store gold under their bed, if there is a way to safely store gold under your bed, right?
It's crazy.
Like, and I think that level of sophistication that comes without fraud for a sufficient period of time is what's required. I mean, if you look at like the Sam Brinkman-Fried stuff, like that just eroded so much trust in the public's eyes of, okay, here's the company that was like in front at the Super Bowl, like showing off the future of what crypto is going to be. And all of a sudden, in a very short time frame in normal people's world, like, he's behind bars, right? And that level of trust, we have to earn that back as a community.
Yeah, I think when you're exactly right in the sense of people don't really understand just how early this market still is, even though we're in a bubble inside of it. We talk about it all the time, and we've been in it for, in many cases, multi-cycles. I mean, if you think about this going all back to 2017, or if you were in before that, I mean, we're moving on a decade of really understanding how this market goes. And maybe now is the first real light at the end of the tunnel that you could see. And even then, it's a very small light at the end of the tunnel. Russell, when you look at that, and from a legal standpoint, you get a chance to help a lot of projects get launched. Are you finding pause and caution still by founders and developers, especially here in the United States, or are you finally seeing some relief? Like, oh my gosh, we're finally in the clear. What do you see?
I'm seeing not really relief, but it's just it's a whole different world than it was in 2023. Where if you counsel these founders in 2023, you would just say, just stay as far away from America as you can. Make your entity overseas and have a bunch of crazy entity charts to try to make sure are you an American?
Yeah.
And if they say yes, okay. If they say no, I say great. Stay out, stay away from America. Don't talk to America. But now it's different because they're coming to me and saying, hey, I want to, it sounds like we're going to get advantages, and they actually want our business and our industry here. And that's great. No one's saying, you come to America now, you can do all this stuff that you don't want. They just want the framework. They don't want to. They want to know what the rules are so they can build in America, and that's what's really exciting about the regulatory developments and all the things that the administrative agencies have been doing lately. Is they're trying to actually make it so you can come here and have laws and set up your company.
What do you make of this 180 pivot by the SEC? I mean, it is unbelievable. I mean, now Hester Peirce came out and said, meme coins are fine. They're not securities. Go have fun.
I mean, I kind of love it. I mean, obviously, there's people on both. Now people are saying, oh, now they're overcorrecting to the other way. And no way. Oh, now crime is legal. But it's what I've always believed. I've never been a big fan of this nanny state idea that someone's going to buy. I won't even say, like, some of these names are just so vulgar and stupid. And then you're going to go to the government and say, they sold me this coin. Like, come on, you bought it yourself, and you're buying these things on secondary markets, and you have to take some responsibility. It's called economic freedom, and no other country that I know of has these accredited investor type rules.
Exactly.
Like, how many laws do you know that treat you differently based on your net worth?
How much you have? Yeah.
I can't think of any other laws that say, is this legal or not? Well, are you rich? Oh, you're not rich? Well, then you're not allowed to do this. You're too dumb. So I'm a big fan of the SEC yesterday. They've been dropping all their cases against everybody, and they dropped the one against Ava Labs. And I mean, did we want our government to be spending our money to investigate the Bored Ape cartoons? Like, give me a break.
Yeah. It's so bad too, because you look at some of the great projects. You look at Stoner Cats when Mia Kunis and Kutcher had launched that. I mean, they just folded to Gary Gensler, and that project would be fine today. No problem at all. It should have been fine back then. How much do you think that, and Ben, this is for you as well, do you think that the United States has thwarted so much innovation that we may not get the real gems back in the U.S.? Or do you think it's still early enough that the U.S. can say, hey, yeah, we want open arms. We want to bring all these devs back in, building companies like you're doing, Ben. What do you guys think is the state of the United States right now for economic potential for crypto and blockchain companies?
I mean, I think we still see a ton of interest in the United States. We've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that our token falls into a utility class, looking at FIT21 and some other pending, options to figure out how do we make sure this isn't a security where we don't have any investors in our token. Like, it's all based on doing work on our network, right? And so, quite frankly, that has kind of put us in a different category because we're a utility token and not a security. At least that's our sincere belief in how we're building our network, that we can work inside the U.S. At least that's our hope based on our interpretation of what we're seeing, right? And there's a lot of hopes and dreams in there, right? And we think we're following the best path forward there. But that has certainly been weighing on us as how we launch all of this and making sure we do it perfect. Like, I've spent hours, many hours figuring out how we do TGE that doesn't create a security event, right? And that we have, like, looking at FIT21 and how all that was architected to say, okay, there's sections in there about like a 12-month rolling window on tokens issued to founding members of the team, right?
Right.
Which means we need to pre-mint any tokens that might ever be issued to the team, lest we create an event that makes us a security for 12 months afterwards. Crazy. Right? Like, so, we're trying to put a lot of thought into those pieces and make sure we're following guidelines. But that isn't even a law yet. Like, it passed the House. It hasn't passed the Senate or gone past the president's desk, right? So we're taking kind of best effort steps because it is so unclear how to do those developments right now. And, like you said, from administration to administration, everything is basically completely changed.
Yeah, and I'm concerned, with the current administration. Now, granted, we've got a 4-year window, and gosh, this first month has just yielded a complete pivot on the landscape. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of macro pressures now coming into it with tariffs and things of that nature that may affect it.
Sure.
But I still think we're getting a lot of manipulation in the market, which is another factor that kind of thwarts innovators and founders like you guys to come into a market like this because they're concerned about it. It's not truly set up like tech was. Well, I can't say that because when I was in Silicon Valley in my early engineering career in the 99, 2000, 2001, I was working with Microsoft, and we had so many new startups that were coming to us for our VC, most of the VCs that we were working with. And we were getting, to me, it felt a lot like crypto is now. They didn't know where the market was going. There was a lot of infrastructure changes. Technology was still being looked at. Even the internet was still being scrutinized. And it was amazing to me that we had it was a Wild West. And I feel like we're living through those times once again. Here we are in 2024. So
yeah,
a quarter of a century later.
It's interesting. Like you look back then and all of that, the smallest group you get is a seed investor who, needs to be an accredited investor,
Yep.
right? And things are changing on how that goes from crypto.
Yeah.
But outside of the US, right? You still can't do that legally at least here in the US.
And I think though that we're getting enough change demographically. If you look at and listen to Vlad Tenev, who is the CEO over at Robinhood, he's out trying to champion the idea of opening up investing in seed stage companies, and making it available on Robinhood, so that would be, back to your point, Russell, that you're talking about, would enable a lot of people who don't have that $1 million net worth to be an accredited investor, and they're able to get into these early stage, because that's really where millionaires are made. We all know it. Yeah. It all happens in early stage. And I think that would be a big step in the next direction for sure. Russell, one last question for you. I'm kind of curious, when you look at the way that memes are being built around some utility now, and the reason I ask this is because we have brands that we consult with all the time, and they're trying to figure out a model in which they can go to market with a token that is really more built around a loyalty platform. They want to award their users and community with, whatever it might be, goods, services, value, whatever. Do you think that we're going to see more brands launching memes now that we're seeing a little bit of loosening of these requirements? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the bad things about the prior regulatory enforcement was it made everyone say, well, I only can do a meme. I can't have anything that ties into any cool future utility or roadmap, because then suddenly I'm a company and it's a Howey test and I'm a security. Yeah. So, but what I think now is, now that the regulators are going to act in better faith, these brands can act in good faith. Mm-hmm. And the best way to do it is just get started. Start it as a meme, start it as a token, just with your brand identity IP, and then play it by ear. And then in the future, you can run your own L1 on Avalanche. You can turn it into a loyalty thing. You can make it a DAO, but just don't start communicating like your stoner cats. Oh, this is going to be a big thing and there's going to be a return on investment and in profit. Yeah. Just don't mention that. Don't have a roadmap, but slowly start building it out, because that's the great thing about crypto. You can turn it into something.
Listen, it's going to be a crazy time. We are in the gold rush days, guys, as they say. And both of you are out there panhandling, in there trying to figure out how to make it work. So it's great to have both of you on again. Ben Corrado coming in from DeEEP Network, and of course, Russell Klein, an attorney over at Ava Labs. Great to talk with you guys. I always like diving into the bigger picture here on Podcast 9000. So thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, Paul.
You bet. You guys, hey, if you're not subscribed to the channel here, this is our, PBN has two channels. We have the PB Show and, of course, TechPath and PBN. This is one of our other shows that gets put out there. We don't make this available on the podcast side outside of just these special episodes that we do. So make sure and subscribe over on the YouTube channel. If you're watching this there, just hit that link down below, or the subscribe button down below, and reach out to us if you have some ideas. If you're an AVAX builder and have some ideas there, hit me up over on Arena. It's just my @Paul Barron. Okay, you can also hit me up on X, the same account, but very easy. We love to explore new projects out there. So we'll catch you next time right here on the Podcast 9000. See you later.